right, everybody, welcome to another weekly webinar here at Route Consultant focused on the bread and grocery space. My name is Josh Gregory. I am the Vice President of Education here at Route Consultant. And so what that means for you is that whether you're finding this space for the first time or you're already in this space, this is really an opportunity for you to learn more about the potential here, what this opportunity looks like if you're trying to figure out if it's the right fit for you, or if you're already in the space. We want this to always to be a place where you can come, learn, ask questions, and find ways to be a little bit more efficient, do things in ways that maybe you haven't tried before, and see if there's ways to be a little bit more profitable, make a little bit more money. And we always want to try to find ways where we can help the community grow together. Rising tide lifts all boats. So as I said, this is a live webinar. So if anyone who joins has any questions at any time, feel free to submit those in the Q&A button at the bottom of the window. And as I'm talking, we'll go through some content and then we'll have Q&A at the end if there is any. If you're watching not live, if you're on YouTube and trying to just catch up and you have questions about anything that we talk about today, feel free to reach out to us, info@routeconsultant.com. You can send your emails, your questions the same way, and we'll try to find whether it's over email or a call, whatever works best for you to answer those questions and make sure that you get all of those answers as soon as you can. So for today, like I said, we're going to have some content to go over before the Q&A. And if you've been on the previous few webinars, you've seen us talk about a bunch of different things. But in this industry, you will have a specific territory with a specific set of stores that you're servicing. And each of those stores is going to have some specific nuance and require you to think about each of them a little bit differently. And now, obviously, to get really deep into this, we would need to see your exact territory and your exact stores. But really what we want to focus on today is kind of a store level strategy with examples of the marketing and store flow and things that you need to think about in each store, and examples of how Stephen thinks about these and some of his stores. And so that as you're listening to this, you can start to craft that same level of strategy for your own territory. And of course, we're always happy to help out if you have questions about your specific stores. Now, I mentioned Stephen. He's going to be here to help us in this conversation. For those of you who haven't met Stephen Ryan, he is a current operator in the bread space with over a decade of experience in operating these and stepping off the truck and finding ways to not be in the truck every day. So Stephen, you can go ahead and jump on and say hello as we get this conversation started.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Great to be with you.
Good to have you, Stephen. So I teed it up, but before we really go into detail about any specifics of a store, how do you start to just kind of group stores into different categories as you're thinking about your strategy?
Yeah, so this is important to understand when you're looking at purchasing a route. If you own a route, the composition is going to be very different regionally, but you're going to kind of see three categories. You're going to see your super centers. This is going to be a Walmart, a super Target, or a Target if they have grocery. You're going to have a traditional grocer. This is going to be someone like a Kroger, a King Soopers, a Vaughn's, maybe a Weis Market. And then you're going to have C stores. And each one is going to have a little bit different way that they bring their product to market and show value to their customer. And so it's important that you understand that, and so that you can market your product accordingly and you can understand the sales flow and really grow your business right off the gate.
Yeah, and I think that's an especially salient point if you're a new investor. You're just going to see a revenue and you're going to see a number of stores. And so starting to conceptualize and understand how these impact both the money you can make and also your potential for growth, and also what your daily operations are going to look like, is really important when you're actually trying to figure out which one's the right fit for you and where you want to invest your time and energy. So I think that's a really important clarification, is that not all stores are the same, and your strategy is going to vary across all of them. So I think the first one you mentioned is something like a supercenter or a Walmart. So what's important to understand there about a strategy?
Okay, so a Walmart, a supercenter, they're going to operate with an EDLP marketing strategy. And so that means everyday low price. They're going to negotiate. Since they're the big boys, they buy lots of product. They have the power to sell for less every day. And so they're going to typically on a yearly basis plan the pricing that they have with the product that they're buying. And so that's not going to have deep discounts. That's not going to be, seasonally adjusted. That's going to be set typically for 48 to 52 weeks, and Walmart sells for less. So within that, it's important to understand that you're not going to have nearly as many product fluctuations on volume as you might around a traditional grocer where they change the ad on a weekly basis. So certainly you're going to have some seasonality fluctuations. Obviously, we talked about before, you're going to sell a lot more hamburger buns in June than you will January. But the promotional cycles are not going to be nearly as heavy. And so understanding that, Walmart sells for less, lots of people go in there to buy product on an everyday basis, and they're really not shopping an ad. They're not clipping coupons.
Okay. So yeah, you're right. There's not going to be a lot of swing in the product, but I would imagine it's, with the amount of people that are going in and out of that store, that volume's moving pretty quickly. So you're always trying to make sure that it's stocked. A company like Walmart that is massive, across the country, has a lot of power and generally sets their own standards and just expects you to comply. How big of a problem is it if you start to have any kind of service and product miss at a store like Walmart?
Yeah, great question. It can be an issue. Obviously, we've talked about before, fulfillment and online shopping has really changed the game, where it used to be someone would go to the store and maybe they were out of stock on something and they left unsatisfied. Now there are metrics on fulfillment rates when something is purchased online. And so that's a great way for us to better understand our business and opportunity and how we can grow. But keeping stores in stock is a huge priority right now. Fulfillment rates, we've talked about that. And then really, focusing on service. So making sure that you're there, right product at the right time in the right store, focusing on your seasonal holidays, the products that sell the best in the summer versus the wintertime.
Yeah. If Walmart's upset with you, are you going to hear, is your depot manager going to come to you more quickly than somewhere else? Like, how fast does that ball roll downhill if you start to have a problem with something like Walmart versus some of those smaller stores?
Yeah, Walmart's so big, it's something that you're really not going to hear directly from the store. So these metrics are going to be communicated through a district manager. There's going to be analytics, from someone that's way smarter than me sitting in an office. And you're going to get an email. They're usually not coming down hard on you, but you need to make sure that you adapt and you adjust as these things happen. 98% is the expected in-stock fulfillment rate for online shopping. And that can be difficult across 50 SKUs. But it's not hard once you get a good understanding of your market. Once you understand how the product sells, we've talked about focusing on your top 20 SKUs and making sure those are never out of stock. Of course, the others are no less important, but starting there as a baseline as you start to, get your legs under you as an operator.
Got it. Okay. So Walmart's important, but there's not a ton of variability. It's basically keep the stores stocked, and that's the name of the game, because the volume's moving, but there's no real sales. It's pretty constant. So what about that next kind of big category? How do you think about something like a Kroger?
Yeah, so Kroger is a big player in the space too. So they operate under many different labels across the country. You might be familiar with a King Super or a Ralph's. I think they operate under a name called Vaughn's. You can Google it. There's maybe 10 that they operate under, but the same marketing strategy is going to apply. And so they're going to have typically a 2-week, what they call mega event, or buy five, save five sale, excuse me. And so the product will be on sale, say marked down from $3.99 to $2.99. But then if you buy the 5 participating items within that mega event, you would get an additional $5 off, bringing that unit cost down to $1.99. And so those are going to be usually 2-week events. These are going to be themed. And so the store is going to be themed based on, the seasonality, the holiday that they're focused around. End caps are going to change out. They're going to really focus on stuff that is moving quickly. And so that's going to be distinctly different, than a Walmart, where you're not going to see many themed lobbies. You're not going to see, banners. You're not going to see that digital focus from the app. Kroger's really moving into.
Got it. And so name of the game there, I'd assume, is, they're going to give you some amount of advance notice that mega sales are coming and you got to do everything you can to be prepared for those swings that are going to come in the volume spikes.
Yes. So again, like we've talked about, you're going to have a promotional calendar. It's going to show you're on the mega event, you're on NCAP number 5. But even beyond that, I do encourage you guys to start trying selling at a local level. Speak with your grocery managers, your store managers. Aside from a mandatory NCAP, is there any additional space that you can get just from your relationship with the grocery manager? And that's something that, really goes a long way in driving volume.
Got it. Okay. So just to clarify for me and people listening, Kroger, is it basically Walmart and supercenters are one and everything else that has the big brand names are the same? Like is Publix the same as Kroger in terms of what they look like?
Publix is going to operate a little bit differently. They have a huge footprint in the South. They are, I believe, they're based out of Florida, but they really own the South market. And so they're going to operate more on a weekly sales flow. And so they love to advertise. If you shop their ad, the buy one, get one free sales, you can, in fact, have a shopping cart full of product cheaper than you can buy it at Walmart. The difference there is you have to plan for it. You have to shop the ad. It's a deeper discounted product, but it's only going to last for 7 days. And the unit lift that you get off of this is tremendous. So Publix is a great partner. If you're fortunate to have one of those in the South, oftentimes you may see a 10x lift on unit sales. And so the easy number there is if you normally sell 10 on a BOGO sale, I would expect to sell 100. That's a good ballpark unit wise. Again, it's different if you're in South Florida than you might be in North Carolina. But just know that Publix is a great partner in the grocery space. They do a lot of hard work. They change end caps on a weekly basis, but if you keep your store stocked, if you really plan around their promotions, you can make a lot of money.
Yeah, and I think you're starting to kind of see the puzzle pieces on when you're planning through your business on a weekly basis. It's like, okay, my Walmart, I just got to have enough. Kroger, what 2 week, kind of the mega sales, which ones of those are going on? What do I have to prepare for? And Publix is just every week, make sure I'm thinking about, are any of these products on the Publix weekly sale? Because that's not going to be a trivial blip. 10x is a lot. And so planning around it sounds critical because if you don't have it, you're gonna sell out the first day and be out of stock on the shelves. Not only are you missing the revenue, but that's a lot of days where Publix is gonna not be super happy with you that they ran a sale and are out and you're out of stock immediately. So not only is it important to be thinking through each of these stores and puzzle pieces to get the revenue, but you got to make sure on those crazy sales that you're ready so the stores aren't angry. So I think those are kind of all of the big boxes to think through, but at C stores, so the smaller convenience type stores, do they run sales? Do they communicate those? How do you think about stuff like that? Or is there anything else to think about at the store level for those?
Yeah, so a C-store route is going to be a lot easier to manage. You're not going to have nearly as many promotions. Occasionally, you might, if you're a chip vendor in a certain location with a whole lot of C stores under one brand name, you may have some promotions around some seasonal events. But typically, you're selling individual single serve items that are going to be at a baseline price. You're not going to see big end caps. You're not going to be changing out displays. Most of this is going to be allocated shelf space or maybe a rack, maybe a small little setup by the register. But that's going to be distinctly different than if you have a grocery route. And so understanding that composition is important.
Yeah, so in some ways it might be similar more to a Walmart where the volume's pretty consistent. It's just not as much volume. It's a much smaller amount.
That's true. And I will say C stores are typically a lot easier to work with. So service before 7 o'clock is not nearly as important at a C store. Typically they open a little bit later. You have all day. You're working with one person, typically, the cashier, they're going to be the one to check you in, check you out. They can slow down progress a little bit. If you're waiting on them and they're busy, there's only two people there and there's a line of customers trying to buy stuff. You may have to wait. So it's important to think about that and as you're planning your day, think about how you might be slowed up.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. If you've got a tight window to make your next delivery, maybe save the C store for later, since it's so flexible and it's not going to be a huge deal. But I think that's a great point. I could easily see that where they're not super concerned with dealing with you if they've got a line of 10 customers and you're just going to wait. Um, Perfect. So for all of these, one of the things that we've touched on previously, but I think is worth coming back to when we're talking about store level strategy is the store flow. So how do you kind of think about that? How should it affect your planning at these different categories?
Yeah, so as we're thinking about promotions, as we're thinking about entering the store, each store is really going to try and funnel you through a flow. And so that's going to typically bring you into a produce department. That's going to bring you past bakery, through a meat department. And then toward the back of the store, you might have dairy. And then within that, you're going to have your aisles. And every customer that goes into the store, they're going to walk the perimeter. You've all seen, the people walking down the aisle, looking at the labels, trying to figure out where they need to go. So when you get off the interior of the grocery store, you really get a lot more eyeballs on your product where maybe it's an impulse buy that they weren't thinking about purchasing earlier. They came into the store and they grabbed it while they were there. Those impulse buys are critical in growing your business. So thinking about display location first, if I can get off the interior onto the perimeter of the store, that's your first line of defense in growing volume. Secondly, as you're thinking about that store flow, let's say the bread aisle is on the 10th aisle. And so as you enter the store, you come down the produce department and it starts aisle 1, 2, 3 on down the line to 10. If you can get that bread display within the store flow before the 10th aisle, where all the other bread companies are displaying their product, you're going to have a much better sell through on that display. So you're getting your product positioning out in front of the competition. The customer is presented with it, hopefully well merchandised at a good price. It's desirable. Once they put it in their basket, it's usually checked off their mental list. They're not looking for it anymore. And so once they get down to the bread aisle, it's checked off and they're not looking for something else. And so not only is placement critical, but making sure that you have it looking appealing. So once they see it, they buy from it.
Okay, so what's easier to get, a display at the perimeter or space on an end cap?
End cap displays are really common. So they, in a store like Publix, they change them out on a weekly basis. So again, understanding your composition, that may be a little bit harder at a Walmart. Than it might be at a Publix. But going a step further, thinking about a table or a cardboard hutch, if you can get on the perimeter, but in the middle of the aisle, not only does the customer have to walk past it, but they have to physically avoid it with their shopping cart. And so you get more eyeballs off that table than you would an end cap. And so that's the last piece of the puzzle there. If you can get into the aisle, on a table, on a cardboard hutch, or whatever other product displays your company has for you to use. I mentioned the summer grill cart before. That's an example of this. You can really do some tremendous volume.
And is it, is it as we've talked about before, it's all kind of leveraging the fact that, you've got a good relationship with the store manager, you can move this product, they trust you. Is there any different lever you have to pull to get to, say, the middle of a walkway on the perimeter versus an end cap? Like, does that conversation change at all? Or is it really just seeing, kind of leveraging your relationship and your kind of experience and seeing what they've got open?
Yeah, it's all the above. So thinking about is the product on sale? Does it show value to the customer? Is it desirable? And I guess the last part I would add to that is margin. So if you have a product that's, for example, not in the set at Walmart, but it's a 50% margin product, understanding that all your grocery managers, your assistant managers, they're all bonused off of sales. And so if you can show incremental sales on a product that they haven't sold previously, not only is it a fantastic margin, but it's going to help drive sales growth and unit sales that they didn't have against the previous quarter a year ago. And so that incremental sale, if you have a product that, has a great margin, usually you're going to see high 20s, low 30s, up into the 50s. So if you have a product that's a 50% margin, that's really an easy sell to a grocery manager if they trust you, if they know that you're going to service the store, you're not going to leave empty end caps. That's a great way to leverage the relationship, to serve their interest, and to know what they're looking for.
Okay, and how do you know the margins at the product level? Is that just information that's given to you?
Yeah, so you can get that information from your district manager. You can look at the cost that you're buying it for, the cost that Walmart, Kroger, Publix is selling it for or buying it for, and then what they're selling it for, and you can come up with that.
Got it. So that's I think a really important call out from an analytics perspective that probably a lot of people don't do, because at the end of the day, you're only paid on revenue. So you don't necessarily care about the individual product margin as a distributor of bread, if I'm thinking about it correctly. But leveraging that information for the people who really care at the store manager level can help you kind of say, look, I know that this is going to make you a lot of money, and it's the right product in the right place. Let's work together to have this here and start to kind of I'll scratch your back, you scratch mine type of situation.
That's absolutely right. Aligned interest, knowing that they make a bonus, here's a great product. I'm going to service you well. It's a fantastic margin. I'm going to help you make your bonus this quarter. Present it that way. It's really an easy sell.
Yeah. And I mean, it's just a rule of business, but still, I think it's not a thing that a lot of people may be thinking about in terms of really the things that you can learn that are the things that your store manager cares about are the levers you can pull when you need them. So knowing their bonus structure is huge, and finding ways that you can incentivize them to help your product and then get it in the place that you're going to just move a lot more product. But crucially, as we've talked about today, and as we've talked about on inventory management, if you get one of those deals and you get that space, make sure that you are properly stocking it and that you are on top of that. Because if they've gone out on a limb to help you, and then it's just an empty table after a day because everything's gone, then you've just damaged a lot of trust and a lot of value really quickly instead of growing your business. Okay, so just as kind of a last question here, we've talked about at the store level, we've talked about how they vary across category, but do you adjust things at all based on kind of just the buying patterns of people in a particular area? How much does that affect how you think about it? Like if there's a certain demographic in a certain area, and how much do you think about that versus what a store may tell you, like what a bakery may tell you about the demographics and how you adjust there?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it's important to think about that. If you're in an affluent area where someone buys a brand name for either nostalgic reasons or dietary restrictions, they're not going to be nearly as influenced by a promotional sale as a different customer in another area that may shop, Walmart for one product and then go buy the deals at Publix for another. So it's important to really think about that as you spread out across the whole country and think about, your individual route and growing. And I'd love to have that conversation with you if you're thinking about a specific area. If you can bring me some stores, we're happy to come alongside you and really think about that conversation.
Yeah, and I think that's where a lot of little nuance is going to come in when you're like, you're looking at this is the store, this is, generally at Publix, this is what I always do. But in this area, I need to adapt my strategy because no one buys this one product, or everyone buys this one product that I typically never sell at Publix. And so thinking through those types of things is how you go from a good contractor to a great one. And with that comes increased revenue because you're pushing more product and moving it. You're moving, what is it you always say? The right product at the right time. What's your little saying, Stephen?
The right product in the right store at the right time. It fluctuates a lot, but you can make really great money in this business if you understand that, if you adapt to that well. And the faster you can onboard that type of mentality and really learn that, the faster you're going to start growing.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Okay, perfect. So that I think that's really what we wanted to cover at the store level strategy. So I appreciate that there. If anyone has any questions, this is the time. We do have a new listing this week out of Central Massachusetts. This is 9 weekly accounts and it's selling at 325,000. It's doing about 18,000 a week. And there is a truck available that with the truck lease option if that's something you're interested in. So new one out of Massachusetts. We've got plenty of others on the website. So if you have any questions on those, if they're in your neck of the woods, let us know. I'll also, just as a reminder, a couple of upcoming events. One, if you are up in the Baltimore area, up anywhere near DC, our team is going to be out there January 4th. Or maybe it is January, yeah, January or June 4th, not January. January would be a long way off. June 4th, we have a happy hour up in Baltimore. So if you're in that neck of the woods, it's completely free to attend. You just have to register on our website. We'll have food and drink. You can meet us, meet the team, and network with other logistics professionals in your area. Also, if you're still trying to figure out if bread's the right space for you, we do have what we call new investor summits. And it's combined with some digital work and a workshop in person in our offices in Nashville. So if you're interested in that, we actually have one next Friday. And really the goal of it, like I said, is to help solidify whether this is the right space for you or not. And then come in, meet us, ask your remaining questions, really learn the operations of this business. And ideally, coming out of that day, you either feel confident that this is the space for you. We've helped identify a few ways forward, whether it's to go directly to a bakery or purchase an existing route, or you decide it's not the right space for you. And we still consider that a win instead of investing hundreds of thousands of dollars into one of these businesses and running it for a couple of years and then finding out it's the wrong fit. We would much rather you come in for a day and decide there after spending, a day and a couple $100 that it's the wrong fit for you. We would consider that a win too. Other than that, we do have lots of content, lots of ways you can work with us. So if you're already an operator and looking for ways to, work through your current territory or work through a territory you're evaluating, trying to decide if it's worth what it's being asked for, what are the right stores, how do I start thinking about my strategy at the store level, at different types of stores, we're always happy to work with that, if it's a one-off basis for an evaluation, or if it's on an ongoing basis, working with Stephen and I to make sure that you're on the right track and continuing to operate efficiently and effectively. So if wherever you are, any of those different places, feel free to reach out to us, info@routeconsultant.com, or we've got lots of resources directly on our website if you just want to go there. Stephen, thank you so much for being here, answering all of my questions and providing all this insight.
My pleasure. Great to be with you, and see you next week.
Yep. See you and everybody else next week.